one.
All right.
So, my name is Steve Nawrocki. I was born in Minnesota at Swedish Hospital in Minneapolis. That would be like you betcha country and good golly. My family bought a ranch in Colorado in the early 50s. I became a cowboy for about 3 years. And my family in Minneapolis was in the Hamm's beer business. They had the distributorship for Minneapolis and the home of the Vikings and the Twins. They picked up semis of beer at the brewery in St. Paul and hauled it all the way to South Minneapolis to the Metropolitan Stadium. I went to Mankato State College. Anyone ever heard of Mankato State College? Just so happens I got kicked out of Mankato State College. After 2 years of going there, part of the time being in Aspen and part of the time being in Malibu, I left there with 10 hours that transferred to CSU Pueblo, better known as Southern Colorado State College. They actually took me, but they didn't have to keep you. And that really turned my life around, coming to Pueblo, Colorado. How exciting that was, the 3 years that I spent in undergraduate school, out on the hill. And let me tell you, it was out on the hill. It was nothing but dirt and cactus and tarantulas. But I had a great education. From there I went on to the University of Oklahoma and got a master's degree. Decided I wanted to come back to Colorado and was drawn back here in 1976. And my family had moved here and they had a restaurant, a Scandinavian restaurant, no less, in Colorado City in a riding stable. It was called the Scandia. And they had that there for like 25 years. I tried to get a teaching job, and that's when the steel mill industry was turning down. Nobody was hiring. All they wanted to know was what you could coach. And I said, well, I could coach skiing, surfing, but none of those things were applicable for District 70. And so I ran into a guy named Dave Dover. He owned the Dore Lamp Company out in Colorado City. I don't know if you can remember that, but that was one of the first big industries, at least for Colorado City and Pueblo County at that time. And he had two sets of twins. One set was deaf, and one night him and I were drinking when I first met him, and I drank too much. The next day he wrote me a check for $12,000 and said, start a nonprofit for the deaf and hearing impaired. We started the first sign language classes, interpreting services in Pueblo County that are still in existence today. Since that time, that was in 1978, I've been the executive director of 3 different nonprofits. That one was called Valley Human Resources, and then I became the director of Goodwill Industries, and I absorbed all those programs under Goodwill. And then in 1988, I became the director of SRDA, which is a Senior Resource Development Agency, and still gainfully employed. Actually, after 2 terms on city council, each time I ran for office, the first time I ran, I lost. I got my board's permission to run. And so here I am. What year is this? 2018, 30 years later. I asked that same board, do you mind if I run for mayor? They said, go for it. And they said, if you come up short, you still have a job. So you can't beat that. Anyhow, it's great to be here. And Chief, thank you for sponsoring me. Oh, I do have a wife. God, I thought this was about me. I do have a wonderful wife. Her name is Angela Hidron. She's the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club. And I have a lovely stepdaughter. Her name is Melanie Bravo. And she was the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club and now works at the national office of Boys and Girls Club in Atlanta, but still lives in Pueblo. My daughter, Louisa, she lives in Tucson. She was an outstanding athlete at Centennial High School. She swam her way through UNC, All-American in Division II, and has a boat in San Diego and miss her, get to see her once a year. So, how's that?
You just got people that are married like you now, people that have kids that swam like you now. I mean, how can you go wrong?
Yeah.
And then you had one more announcement.
Oh, yes, and by the way, I'm going to stay later. I don't want to bug anybody. I do just happen to have a petition, myself and 26 other people do, And we need 100 valid registered voters in Pueblo, the city of Pueblo, in order for us to get on the real ballot. Pretty much sure everybody's going to be able to do that since we have 70,000 registered voters in the city. But I don't have all mine yet, and I've been trying to do that on my own, between everything else. I'll be sitting at that table when we're all done, and if you feel like this is not an endorsement, it's just I need a signature if you're a registered voter, and then I'll be able to be on the ballot. So thank you. Does that cost me $5?
I believe it's 5 plus all the time past 3 minutes.